get a lot of calls from people who ask, what do I have to do to get a trademark? There's a lot to explain about trademark law, but I thought we'd just start with the process of trademark registration in the United States. In later videos, I'll talk about the benefits of registration, what it means if you don't or you can't get one, but for now, let's just focus on what the experience of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office application and registration process is. The most important thing to understand about this is that an application for a trademark is not the same thing as getting a trademark. An application is just that, you've applied. The registration comes at the end of the process. You might have heard some press earlier this year about the rapper Megan Thee Stallion and how she trademarked the phrase hot girl summer. Well, she didn't. She applied for registration for the trademark, and as of right now, that's all she's got. She still doesn't even have the registrations. So now that we understand a little bit more about the difference between application and registration, let's talk about the process. So you've picked a great name for your new business where you'll be making and selling trendy new clothes. In fact, you've already got a small online business and you've sold a couple of new dresses. You're developing a brand and you want to protect it. Before we file an application with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, or PTO for short, we'll make a couple of decisions. What kind of clothes will you be selling? Do you want to use a design mark along with the name, or is this just going to be a word mark? Once we know what the mark is and what the goods and services are that are attached to it, we can file the application. So we go online, we fill out an application with the PTO. They charge us about $275 per class of goods and services. In this case, we're registering for clothing, a good, but also for retail services because you've got your own store with the same name. A quick note, we could have filed before you actually sold any dresses. An application can be filed before the trademark is in use, but the registration won't issue until after the PTO sees that the mark is really in use. So in that case, the process is a little bit longer and it's a little bit more expensive, but otherwise it's the same. So once we file the application, it goes to a lawyer at the PTO called the examiner, who is assigned to examine it and make sure that it's all okay. It meets all the requirements for a trademark and it's not too confusingly similar to other marks or too common of a term in the industry to be protectable. You won't get a registration if another clothing company has the same name or a very similar name, or if you try to register great clothing for clothes, because that mark is just too descriptive. We'll talk a lot more about confusingly similar and descriptive marks in later videos. So it takes the examiner about 3 months to review your application and let us know if they have any objections. And if they do, then they'll send us an office action. Sounds scary, doesn't have to be. First of all, part of our job as trademark lawyers is to try to anticipate problems like confusingly similar or descriptive marks and help you pick marks that will avoid those problems. We're not always successful, and sometimes the examiners are really picky about how we've described your products, for example. Trademark speak is almost English, but not quite. Anyway, once we get an office action, we have 6 months to respond. You can get a little extra time, but there's an additional $100 fee for that, and really there's no reason to wait. In our response, we can either make the changes that the examiner wants, or we can make arguments as to why the mark shouldn't be considered confusingly similar with another mark, or why it's really not that descriptive at all. And sometimes we win. If we don't win, we get a second chance and we can appeal the decision to the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board. But at every stage, you get to decide whether you want to keep going or whether you want to control your costs and cut your losses. If the examiner agrees with the arguments that we make, then she'll approve the application and it will go to publication. It'll take a couple of months for it to actually get published, and then once it does, the mark will be published for 30 days, during which time any third party who thinks that they have a claim to the mark can oppose the registration. It gets published in a public journal, almost like a newspaper, except that not that many people really read it. Some companies that want to make sure they protect their own marks from similar registrations will put a search on these publications and they'll get notified, and then if they want to object, they can file an opposition proceeding. That process looks a lot like regular old litigation. We'll talk a lot more about that in later videos. If no opposition gets filed, then you're good to go. If you had already opened the store and sold dresses before we filed the application, then all you have to do is sit back and wait for your very pretty registration certificate to come in the mail. If you had not started using the mark before the application, then we will still have to prove use to the PTO before they will send you that certificate. Once you get it, you can use that circle R symbol. Everyone who searches for your mark or a similar mark in the PTO database will see that you have a registration, and you can use your registration to stop competitors who start similar companies using your mark or a mark similar to it, more or less anywhere in the country. There are a couple of limitations to that rule, but that's for another video too. Just to sum up, application, then about 3 months later, an office action maybe, then publication maybe about 8 months later if we really dilly-dally on responding to the office action, and then about 3 months later or longer if we still have to show use, your mark will be registered. If you're ready to start the process, we're happy to help. For now, thanks for watching. Bye.